Welcome, everyone. My name is Leah Sanchez, and I'm the head of programs and outreach at the Textile Museum of Canada. So I'm speaking to you from my home in Toronto, which is also where the Textile Museum of Canada is located. It is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat. And it is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis. We're grateful to have the opportunity to work here and through our activities, seek to create the space for people to share, learn, and celebrate the textile practices of today and long ago in the spirit of peace, friendship, and respect. I'm really excited to welcome Works in Progress. They'll be hosting this particular workshop on Scrap Challenge. And yeah, so we have Tanya Murdoch and Marnie Saskin. And actually, I'll turn you over to Tanya now, who will talk about Works in Progress a bit more. Thank you. Hi, Tanya.
Thanks, Leah. Okay, so sorry, I haven't done this for a while either. So welcome to the Scraps Challenge. Anyone who works with textiles or makes things is going to end up with scraps. You're always going to have extra things. And so today we're working on what to do with them. And we hope that we end the day with feeling kind of excited about scraps as a material and not so much as a problem to deal with. And hope that at the end of it, you're excited to get back to your scrap bin and make things. So today we're going to do a little introduction of our collective and going to share some inspiration of things you can make with scraps. And we're going to have a little hands-on project, which is just going to be making a badge, like kind of like this kind of thing, or this kind of thing, more like, just so you have something to work on while we're talking. And then we're going to lead a discussion around scraps and sustainability. So I'm just going to start. I'm going to share my screen and just Leah showed me how to do this with. There we go. So can you see that? Full screen?
Yes.
Okay, so we are Works in Progress. We are an artist collective, artists who all have their own practices, but we come together to do swaps and to do workshops. And all of us, at some part in the practice, are interested in working with garbage. We like to make things from other things. So when we're going to do this scraps workshop, I started thinking about the swaps we do, and they seemed related, and I wasn't actually sure right away how, but I think it's about both with clothing swaps and with working with scraps, we are honoring the materials and we're honoring the people who made them. This is a little picture from one of our swaps. We actually try to have some upcycled things at our swaps as a way of sort of keeping that idea of reuse and repair front and center when we do a swap. Just briefly, the difference between a clothing swap and a clothing drive. A clothing swap, we're talking about you bring things to it and you take things from it. So everybody benefits, and it's more of a circular model where things come around and go around. Where a clothing drive is where you take your things and you donate them and someone else takes them away and does something with them. So whether it's a textile drive where you're trying to divert things to the landfill, or whether it's you're donating things to refugees or to people who may need them more. The clothes are coming, like the donations are coming from you, they're going somewhere else, and then someone else is doing something with them. So we prefer clothing swaps because we like the idea of things staying within a circle. I started thinking about this because one of the things we have with when we have a swap is trying to get people to have that idea of both giving and receiving. So when my daughter was little, she's now 18, but she's there on the left, she had a hard time first when she started to outgrow things to give them away. And so it was easier to think about giving them to somebody who would love them, like that, and somebody that she loved. So she could give this hat to her kindergarten teacher who just had a baby. And on the right side, those are some snow pants that were actually were my daughters. They got given to my son, and then they went into a swap that we organized. And then they actually came back to us because they got a hole in the knee, and the people who got them said, we don't, maybe you can use this as an upcycling project. So I put a patch on it, and we gave it back to them, and they gave it to their younger brother. So it's kind of nice to see these things in the community, and it's nice to see. Same thing with scraps. It's nice to see the scraps showing up like in different, in your quilts or your patches or different projects. It's a way of loving them. So just the swaps that we do, we try to keep them, like I said, within the neighborhood. That could be, last time we did multiple neighborhoods, but we have, reusable signs. We try to keep the idea of reuse and sharing front and center. This is, we make these bags out of old t-shirts, and people can fill them up. And we use the works in progress. We use the clothespins as our business cards. So like I said, last time we did 3 different communities, and we'd like this to be, the idea of doing a swap is also that it should be easy for the people doing it. So we did it this time. We had one organizer and lots of people in the community volunteering. We keep it festive. We use, these are actually from scraps as well. Scraps everywhere. So these are bunting, and Marnie's going to talk more about making things from scraps later on in the talk. We make, like I said, we make these from old t-shirts to make these bags. We have, for the swaps we've been doing lately because of the pandemic, and it worked out really well, so we're going to keep doing it. We have each yard host a swap, so nobody has too much work. And it ends up feeling really festive. There's houses around the neighborhood that are all having these swaps. People can stop by, fill up a bag, and we're like, come back next time and bring it back and fill it up again. And it makes it really normal. It makes it really normal and fun, rather than sometimes any kind of waste. It feels, our secondhand things, it can feel like shameful to use it, but this is a way of celebrating that we're keeping it in play. And like I said, we'd like to keep things very obviously about reusing and repairing. So we have an upcycling center, so with a little kind of easy repair advice, and then some things you can do with your scraps. And actually, this artist is going to bring a little video from her. It's Nancy Rollinson, who makes things out of little tiny scraps. And just quickly, the sort of other model is a clothing drive, is where things come in and then they go away. Which, if you have this kind of model where you have this donation, this is a textile drive. We had so many donations, like people are really willing to give away stuff. There's no end of it. But then you have to know what to do with it, and it can be really daunting. So in this case, we partnered with the school that we're working with, partnered with a group that buys textiles by the ton and brings them overseas. And this kind of model, like it's fun and everyone feels good about it, because it's like, oh, someone's taking care of our problem. And you can measure the things. You can see here, there's actually like, one class had 370 pounds of clothes donated. And then the group takes them and they package them up and they resell them overseas. But that idea of taking these things away feels like, because things can become garbage really quickly.
And there's no such thing as a way, really.
And there's no such thing as a way. And in fact, this is like an example. This is a landfill in Accra in Ghana. This group, Dead White Man's Clothes, documents sort of what happens to the clothes when they get there, because it used to be a viable market. Like, and Marnie will talk about this a little bit later, that these are actually part of the problem is we don't have sustainable clothes either. So you can talk about this a long time, but just for ourselves, or just for our own model of working, we like to keep it sustainable, which means keeping it good for everybody involved. So it doesn't become this onslaught of clothing or onslaught of things that somebody has to deal with. It doesn't depend on having a lot of volunteers. And the way that we work as a collective is we try to, we always have someone else there to help us. So today, Marnie is actually our lead artist. I'm going to be there to help her, and Leia's going to help her. But people aren't alone. We also partner with institutions. So this is a clothing shop we did at Moss Park, who are also our granting partners. And we do workshops with them as well. And then we recently got a artist in residency with Double Take, which is a store in Gerrard Street that supports the Yonge Street Mission. And that residency means we can show our upcycled work in the window, which is pretty cool. And all the artists can sell work in the shop. So they get the commission from the work. So they get 75% of sales. And it's on the display inside the shop. So it kind of starts a conversation. It's a little bit of income for artists. And then, yeah, we just try to keep things sustainable for everybody in it. So not just zero waste, but also fun. And that's sort of their approach to working with swaps and stuff, or with scraps as well, is not like, oh, I've got all this stuff and I have to do something with it, and it's this onus, and otherwise I'm doing something bad for the earth. It's more like, it's kind of fun, and it's fun to be looking at scraps and thinking what you could do with them. And if you plan it out, like, you might work in different ways, but if you plan it out, it can actually be something that can be part of your practice as well. So I'm going to stop sharing the screen now. And I'm going to pass it over to Marnie. And so Marnie is very experienced textile artist and an experimenter. She grew up with a Mennonite mother who made all her own clothes, and a daughter who spins and weaves. And they're both part of Marnie and her daughter are both part of the Weavers Guild, I think, in Burlington.
Yeah, Burlington, yeah.
And just like really like a hands-on kind of playful and really thoughtful kind of whole studio, like a zero waste studio, really thoughtful way of dealing with waste coming in and out in a non-judgmental way, just in a kind of like it like, honestly, I think like brings her joy and it's really kind of, but it's kind of inspirational too.
It is studio. It's a very nice way of saying that I mess around and think too much. Yes. Is what she's trying to say. Which, like a lot of us, right? Mm-hmm. Hi, I'm Marnie Saskin. Welcome to my little studio. We're gonna take a look at the little hands-on thing that we're going to do, but if anybody wants to chime in, because I'm curious about this, what's a scrap? So like, I have a definition of a scrap. So to me, a scrap is like, I guess anything either that is, I can't make a mask out of these days, or something that I never want to see again. But somebody else might have a different definition of a scrap. So I'm really curious. Like, you've come to this because you're like, I want to do something with my scraps. But what do your scraps look like? Leftover material that we don't have a use for. This is true, right? So you've come here for ideas for uses of this stuff. Anybody else got any other suggestions? You can unmute yourself and chime in, it's fine. That was from Paige. She said leftover material that we don't have a use for. Well, maybe Paige has just hit it on the nose.
I'm with you. I think it's something that's too small to do something with.
Too tiny, odd shapes.
Yeah, odd shapes are too small.
Yeah, and you're just like, now I have a thing, and nobody throws it out. So the two reasons why you don't throw it out. One is it's against your nature, because we all have stashes and we all hoard, and also thinking about the environment, right? Somebody points out that maybe you've needed to obtain a bigger piece of a specific fabric, and then you don't know what to do with the rest of it, right? I like Susan Davidson's definition, something begging to be used creatively, like that.
Yeah, or too pretty to throw out was another one.
Too pretty to throw out, right?
Yeah.
That's so true. The little video from Nancy really talks about that well. Leftovers from other projects, damaged clothing, or clothing that can't be donated. That's a really good one, because when you do have something that would otherwise be in good repair and it's got this one little thing, and either you don't have time to mend it or you don't know how to mend it, sometimes cutting it up and using it for something else makes it scraps. So, okay, so we've got a broad range of ideas here and approaches. I like that. We all know it's like, I know it when I see it, right? I know it when I see it. So these are scraps. So if you see here on the demo table, so I got my son to help me organize scraps by color the other day. He was my studio assistant. So there's all kinds of stuff in here. And when I start my slides, you'll see later on that I know where this all came from. Like, I know every project that that all these pieces were from. But what we're going to do is, so that you have something to do with your hands while we're talking, is we're going to make a badge. So if you do have a pretty fabric. So I have a little bird fabric here. That's a small piece. I'm not going to make anything out of it. I'll probably cut this out and I can make a badge out of it, like I did with this cat face. Okay, and if you don't know what badges are, my daughter is a collector of her own, and she has a knapsack covered in badges, and these aren't homemade. I think she has some that her brother made her, but you can see they're for decoration, they're for commemoration. You can use it as a patch, you can use it as a logo cover up, you can use it as a pocket. Okay, so Tanya's going to talk about some of the hand techniques that she uses, but I'm going to show you, I'm not going to, I don't know if anybody has a machine, but I don't have to run the machine now, but what I've done on this is I've just used a very small, where's my camera? There we go.
There you go.
I've used a very small applique stitch, right, on my machine, and I've edged it, and then I'll cut it out just past this, and then I'll be able to secure it onto, there we go.
It's a buttonhole stitch, right, on the sewing machine?
Yeah, so what I was going to say is if you don't have a really small applique stitch, Tanya had the brainwave of using a buttonhole stitch. So without the buttonhole foot, you just switch it to number 1 on the first step of your buttonhole maker thing on your machine, and just keep going, and it'll give you an edge like this, and that prevents your edges from fraying. It's a really fast way to do to finish an edge so that there isn't a lot of bulk, and then you can just cut it out and secure it to whatever you're putting your patch on. That's the machine way of doing it. Does anybody have any questions about the quick and dirty machine way? So what I've done is I've taken a pretty pattern, and then I've backed it with a jeans material or something heavier, like a little bit of canvas. Sometimes you have a piece like this. I really like this. I'll probably make an odd shaped badge out of this. It's already heavy, so I'm probably just going to finish the edge and attach it to like a pair of jeans or something like that. Joni has a question.
Hi, do you have to use fusible web to put it to the backing material?
No.
Yay!
So fusible web has lots of wonderful uses. I find it superfluous and finicky, and you're just making a badge. So no, you don't need interfacing. It just depends on how stiff you want it. And honestly, I don't actually want it that stiff because I want to be able to attach it to my knapsack or my sweater or whatever, right? So yeah, you don't need fusible web. Any other questions?
No, and I know sometimes people like they want to put it on like an iron-on thing, but I mean, really, it doesn't take very much to stitch it on.
Yeah, actually,
and
you know what?
It doesn't feel good. Like the iron-on patches don't feel as good, and they don't really.
So that's
on.
what happened with Sophia's. What ended up happening, because she'd had them for so many years, I'll show you on here, is that the iron-on stuff came off, and she had to stitch it anyway. So I actually find that the iron-on stuff is just more work.
Yeah.
Just stitching it on in the first place helps keep it secure and not shift. Any other questions?
Mm-hmm.
Could you pop up like just Marnie and I, and we just like just hold stuff up to the cameras?
Oh yeah, Tanya's got some good examples of badges.
Well, I know good examples, but
they're great examples. I love.
Tanya
has a good attention to detail.
I've been making them for because we have this artist in residency, and I started thinking, well, what can we make that's like easy and fast? Because some of the things you make, it just like you're gonna put a lot of work into it, and you're not gonna be able to charge that much. So I'm not used to doing sales things, so started making patches. But also, it's just like someone's pointing out really beautiful fabric or something, and you want to use it, but there's just a little tiny bit of it, right? So this one I used bits of fabric and I sewed them onto this backing of jeans, and then I sewed just around the edges with a blanket stitch. And this one I didn't even put a back on it. Like, it's just a piece of fabric, literally just cut out, and I hemmed it because it's I thought that'd be nice for the edge, and I could just use it as a patch. But then I have this patch that's ready to go if I have a hole. Like, I just sew that on, and it's pretty. And I was thinking a little bit about shapes. Oh, and you also don't really need to finish the edges either.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you can just sew that's just that's sewn onto there with just
Straight
like a
stitch.
chain, just to change it around to the edge. But then I just did a running stitch along the edge of this, and it's gonna fray, but it kind of looks cool. Like if you, it's the thing is it's aesthetic choices, so it won't fray enough that it's not gonna run all the way into here. Like you don't have to worry about it. It's still going to cover your hole if you're covering a hole, or it's still going to stay intact, but you might the edges might fray a little bit. I've got this one was from it was actually a sheet with this print all over it, all these beetles all over it,
bugs.
and the fabric is it feels a bit weird. Like we can't really make it into something bigger with it. So, but because it feels a little bit slippery or something, it's kind of a weird fabric, but it's such a great print, and so I've made this. My son's 14, and I use this for a knee patch, and it's like he wears these pants all the time because it's just kind of cool to have a bug on your knee. And for that one, again, I did a blanket stitch on the edge, but I've also just done like even the stitch that Marnie was showing you on the machine, you can leave extra bits around the edge. This one I just literally, like, it's just kind of crisscrossed. I know Leah's done one before with it. She did like a patch on which you'll see those many things in the examples, but you can take a patch and use that as a starting point for sewing other things on it. So
yeah, you can add embroidery to it and extend the pattern.
Yeah.
So as far as finishing, so Tanya has shown you can whip stitch the edges by hand. You can turn them under if you don't want them to fray. You would turn them under and do a running stitch. Yeah, that's the whip stitch by hand.
Yeah.
You would turn them under if you want like a finished edge,
like
and just do a running stitch or a back stitch. And then you can also just do a straight stitch and let it fray. So there's lots of different ways so if you guys have scraps with you, maybe you want to take a look at them and grab your needle and thread, and hopefully you have something heavier that you can back it with, or you can go look for something heavier to back it with.
But you don't need to either. You could just make it, if you're not going to do it as a badge, you can just do like a patch that you're going to use to patch something later. And you can sew them together like you can quilt, like a quilt or something. You don't need to. It's nice to have a back because it gives you something to grab onto and to sew up the edges, and it might get a little bit wrinkly.
More sturdy. Yeah.
Like this one is it's a bit wrinkly at the edges, but again, when you sew it down, it's going to be fine.
Diane has a really good point about using selvages. I love me some selvages. So anything, so selvage is the finished edge of yardage, or if you're hand weaving, it's what your selvage is, and that's already a finished edge, so you don't have to worry about it. So planning ahead and using those, or if you have scraps with selvages, taking advantage of the selvage is always fun because it's less work, and that's efficient and
sustainable.
Okay, so that's our little project. I'm going to be busy with my hands doing other things and talking, and I think
we're going to show.
Okay, so you guys have little pieces of fabric and hopefully some thread and needle, and keep your hands busy. Does anybody have questions about making the badges at all before we start with the other stuff? Because there's going to be more inspiration. No questions. Okay.
Okay, cool.
All right.
I'm going to try to share screen again. So this is, yep.
I thought I saw a hand. Did I see a hand?
Oh, sorry, this is Joni, and I lowered a hand because I think
lowered her hand. Okay.
Raised hand.
During a workshop, my peripheral vision is on heightened alert.
Yeah, sorry. There was just a comment about using taking pride in showing your stitches and showing your work. Yeah. So yeah, this is that's my definitely my version, because I'm not. You'll see actually she's got some really nice stitches, and you can go really deep on the stitches, and it can be a chance if you do embroidery. You can do some embroidery on your patch, right? Not just about the edges, but you can do some embroidery in the middle. You can do some applique stuff. You can put layers on. So just kind of look what you got and see what you want to put together, because we'll have a show and tell at the end if you want to share.
I would love to see a little bit of work at the end. I love show and tell. Okay.
So I'm going to show you this, a very quick video. This is just another artist in our group. And it's about a 4-minute video. So give me a second. I'll get it started.
She couldn't actually make it in person today. So we did a little video with her.
Yeah. So hang on, I'll get this up here. Okay, you can see that?
Yep.
Okay, here we go.
Hi, I'm Nancy Rollinson, and I love to make stuff. And one of the things I've really gotten into lately is using small fabric scraps. I save thread, I save hems, ribbons in the top that they're used to sort of hang things up. I always cut those out and put those in my stash. This one actually is from one of those shirt things. That's such ribbon there. I didn't buy that. I cut that thread, or cut that piece off. Then I just stick it in big containers like this. Then I can go later and I can sort them out if I need to. But actually, I don't. I just go through them and pick things up as for color and texture as I need them. With the way my brain works, I like to go through it because if I go in that one jar of the certain size, then I might miss the piece of yellow, mustard yellow there. And it's like, well, maybe that's better. So there's just one where I've just woven some things, done some embroidery on that one. Just to, be free with it. And because you haven't invested a lot of money into it, so it doesn't work. To take it apart and do it again, or to try to figure out a way to make it work. No disrespect to the people who don't like to work that way, because there are a lot of people who want to buy all new stuff and cut it in geometrically and be in very control. Those are beautiful. They're wonderful. But I think what's nice about, if you're interested in taking your scraps and stuff, is that you really have to kind of throw rules out the window sometimes and just sort of see what works, because it will surprise you that when you try to do something, of course, statistically, that things aren't going to work, but you'll be surprised at how many times it does work, and it's going to be better than you thought it was. That certainly has been my experience. Started off actually with really basic things, like when I was a kid, you would make sachets out of lavender, and so that's what I did with this one. So those scrunchy things. This one was just using a scrap of polyester. It was an old scarf. I always have like the odd sock, so just sort of bunching it around like that. And then as I had my scraps, I would just sew on bits on it. So then you overlap them and till it basically looked like it was done. That was kind of fun. I'm not really sure what that is. I'm thinking sort of that unity and multiplicity kind of thing. Like if I get maybe about 9 of them, you could be in a nice bowl. It would look nice. It's sort of an art thing. I love repurposing old socks. So we've got a couple of examples here, and always saving buttons. Just recently, I got into this idea of making little tiny creatures. This is sort of using a quilting idea, and just basically, stitch through it, patch stuff up. I had a bunch of really small pieces that were still nice fabric, but I didn't know what to do with it. So just put little circles in around that, and just decided to, here's another one too, stitched around it. And I had an old pair of pants, and that's what this stuff is. So that's just using coiled rope, cut up old t-shirts into strips and sort of coil those around like that. And what that is that's just old thread, just a whole bunch of thread. And I'm just bringing it in through here like this. Don't throw anything away. And it's amazing how you can make sort of humble stuff that other people don't see the beauty in making it into something that's aesthetically pleasing and in some cases quite useful. The morning I decided to make this doll was not in my mind. You kind of let the fabric decide what you're going to do, right? So that's the fun.
Okay, so that's Nancy.
Really like Nancy.
Yeah. So this is just, I thought we'd share that with you because it's, it's a way for you to see some of the things that she's done with these little tiny scraps. So hopefully give you some ideas for the badges. Okay.
Oh, is that me?
It's you now. Yes, I'm handing it back to you, and I am advocating.
Okay. All right. So now I get to talk for hours and hours and hours about scraps. There's lots of ways to approach using scraps. you can essentially make them into yardage, which is what quilting is, right? So if you look, I am not a quilter. I have quilted, but I am not a quilter, and this is not a quilting workshop. But so these I have some examples of squares that were donated to Works in Progress. Somebody was done with them, didn't want to see them again. You can see from those are quite small pieces. Same with here. So those are quite small, those pieces, right? That is very finicky work. It's beautiful work. And I think probably one of the reasons why it's not my kind of work is I have giant hands and I can't do the tiny little stitches required. I do machine quilting. So I took an improv wedge workshop with, oh shoot, I'll put her name in the handout later on. But you can see in this, there's lots of really small pieces. There's one of my favorite spots on the quilt actually is like tiny little pieces, right? So you can see here, all the little pieces coming together. Some of them are quite small. So this is a way of using your scraps to make bigger things, right? And that's I mean, there's so much historical precedent for this. There's so much good work about this. In fact, I think ROM has an exhibit right now on quilting and Black Canadians and the history of quilting here in Ontario. So that is one idea. So you're going macro, you're using your scraps to make something bigger. But not all scraps. Some scraps are pretty and some scraps are not. So we can get smaller and smaller. You're using your scraps basically as yardage. So I'm not making them into something, but I have leftovers from a project. I'm going to use it for a different project. So I've used something, I've made a shirt, I have leftover, I'm going to make a cutlery wrap, or, you know, we all do this in our studios where we're going smaller and smaller and smaller. When you get into the really small stuff,
yeah, this
is where you are potentially chucking it, right? And I think anybody who's shown up here doesn't want to throw their scraps away. And we don't live in a world anymore where yardage is hand woven, and so our clothes are sewn out of squares and rectangles to maximize the amount of fabric that you're using, because you would never think of throwing something so precious and so time consuming and so resource consuming away, right? So clothing often was cut historically to use the full yardage, and that doesn't happen anymore. And also, we have a lot of our textiles are no longer compostable. So this whole idea where, oh, we want to keep textiles out of the landfill, it actually wouldn't be a big deal, really, except I've heard feedback where the big truck, like the, what are these called? Bulldozers. They don't like textiles because it mucks up the machinery, like it mucks up the treads of the bulldozers. But it actually wouldn't be a big deal if all of our textiles were still compostable. So anything wool, silk, linen, cotton, all of those are compostable. Even the industrialized stuff like the cellulosic stuff made from plants like rayon, tencel, those kinds of things, even though they're really resource intensive and polluting, they're still technically compostable. Right? So
you could just cut them all up and
you could cut them. I have a friend who actually composts her anything plant-based, anything animal-based. She just puts it in her compost pile. She cuts it up small, puts it in compost pile, disappears. So that's actually a viable thing, but it's not viable on the large scale because not all of us have access to compost. And it's really hard to separate things now because of blends and polyester, and there's just plastic in most clothes now. And there's a lot of, we fall in love with a print and we're like, I know it's polyester, but it's so pretty and I need to use it in this project, right? And then you have scraps, and we really want to keep the plastic out of the environment. So what are we going to do with it? So that's one of the reasons why we are trying to divert our scraps into, it's almost, I call it sequestering. So I like to sequester my scraps. I'm going to keep them in circulation as long as possible. Like Tanya said earlier, it's also a way of honoring the work that goes into them. Like you can't really talk about sustainable textiles without talking about labor justice, economic justice. The reality of the world is that it's an intersectional kind of thing, right? So all clothes are handmade. So how do we honor the work that's gone into that, even with our scraps? And actually in the resources, when we post them, I have a bunch of, we've worked on a list of amazing resources. If you do want a little bit more information about textiles, the OR is Present is an absolutely fantastic organization. They do a lot of open source education. And I think they were involved in Dead White Men's Clothes, Remake, Fashion Revolution. There's kind of like this big groundswell. Ooh, Leah just put a whole bunch of links in the chat. Thank you, Leah. There you go. Have fun. Go forth and explore. Yeah, we'll put out the information afterwards. So there's lots of reasons. And I mean, you guys all have your own reasons for showing up. A whole bunch of people showed up to talk about scraps. So, you know, you will have your own personal reasons for wanting to use scraps. So inspiration a little bit. I will do some showing, and then I have a little bit of a slideshow. Some of the stuff that didn't make it onto slideshow are, I make a lot of things out of sweaters with holes in them, sweaters with weird prints, lots of sweaters. These are the selvages from sweaters. So when I cut up a sweater, when I bring it into the studio, I cut it up so that I'm essentially making myself small yardage. I hate the seams and I don't have time to unpick things. I bet you Nancy would find it very soothing, but I'm not unpicking it. So I cut out the selvages. And this is just a trivet. I made like a hot plate. It's wool, so it's actually great as a hot plate on a wood table. I just crocheted the selvages together.
Can you put it up beside you as well? Because I think some people can't see it on the, there you go.
Okay, so that's just really, that was a really quick and quick. I just saved all the selvages over the whole project of a blanket, and I just crocheted them quickly into a hot plate. But what I'm going to do now, because I think the other stuff, we're going to do something live. I have an experiment that I'm going to let sit. So you're not going to know what this is, but I'm going to put it on the demo table. This is hot water. And this is something I'm going to talk about during my slideshow. Okay, I'm going to put this in the hot water, and we're going to see what happens. So it's,
Leah, we should make sure that we get the demo table full screen.
Okay,
to
pin it
make sure
down.
everyone can see it.
Dun, dun, dun. I haven't done this yet, so we're going to see what happens. I'm going to explain what this is during the slideshow.
So this is like a little sort of stiff thing you've made.
Yeah, this is a thing I've made. I will explain what it is, but it needs to sit for a bit in order for this to, I think, my guess is. So we're going to see what happens. All right, it's going to sit here during the slideshow. Okay. So let's start my slideshow because I have pictures to share with. You guys can make notes. I am not proprietary about these kinds of things. If you want to screenshot, if you want to use any of this in your own practice, please go ahead. If you want to find me and follow me on Instagram, or if you want to give me credit, go ahead. I really do firmly believe in open source education and sharing ideas. So that's what I feel about this. So I'm going to share screen. Okay. Can everybody see it okay? Hold on 1 second. I think I have a problem. Let me see. I just have to move my people. Oh, sorry, guys. Oh, no, we're good.
It's okay. It's fine. We're seeing it. And
okay, can you see it?
Yep.
Okay. All right, I have to go backwards. So, scraps. Trust me, my scraps are not organized by color. I got my son to help me with that a little bit the other day, just for funsies. Okay. As I said before, when I was showing you my thing of scraps, everything, like I know where everything comes from. I think most of us most of us do, right? So t-shirts, the improv kilt I was working on, a pillowcase, an old sock, maybe a sock. I find darning cotton socks really pain in the butt, so I cut them up and use them for other things. Somebody gave me a hand-woven throw that they wanted, through hoping I would repurpose, which I have. So I have scraps from that. I made a lot of masks over the pandemic, so I have a lot of mask scraps. Stuff from banners, stuff from curtains, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? And I think that's what Tanya said before, is that there is almost like an emotion, not an emotional attachment, but there is a touchstone with these kinds of things. So how do we use these in a way that brings us joy? Okay, I love getting rid of logos, so I'm a little obsessed. That's an old sock that my daughter wore out. I cut off the foot, used it for stuffing scraps, the foot part, but I kept the heart donut because heart donut. And then I just used it as, I sewed it on top of this cardigan. So instead of, there we go. So instead of a corporation or a business yelling at me every time I put on my clothes, I get to look at a heart donut, which is infinitely better. Yeah, go ahead.
The bee that you're wearing on your sweater is also
yeah, that's
covering a logo.
also covering a logo.
Okay. Because
I don't even know. See, I've forgotten who made this sweater. So as the text says, I am a little obsessed with logo removal. So you can applique a scrap on top, like the llama is also covering another tag on a different sweatshirt, or you can do a reverse applique. So something like, I don't think I'm wearing it, but if you don't like the print on a t-shirt, what I do is I put scraps underneath and I sew around the print a couple of times, and then I excise the print off the t-shirt, and it's a reverse applique, so whatever's behind shows through. It's kind of like, if you can highlight it, I don't know if you can, well, I'm sharing screen. If you can see the demo table, I'll show this afterwards too.
yeah.
So it's like this. This is like a layered reverse. So
Wow. This
is actually multiple layers of t-shirt, where I've just cut away each time I've added a layer. Okay, so that was done with scraps too. Again, this is the heart is an applique, so it's on top, and then the workout shirt is I put a bunch of scraps together to do a patchwork, so color block, and then I put it underneath the front of the shirt, sewed around whatever shape I wanted, and then cut the print out that I didn't want to see anymore. And honestly, single-use t-shirts are one of the biggest textile pollution problems. They're just, it's a bane. So if you have a way of keeping that t-shirt in rotation that you actually like, this is way more fun. More applique. And so the reason why I put these two pictures up is they're both rainbow dots, aren't they? Mm-hmm. The one with the applique with the yellow outline, that's an applique stitch like I showed with the cat, where it's like it's a finished edge, because that's a woven. On the bag here, I was covering up stains. The bag is made from, the patches are made from t-shirt material. And the nice thing about using knits and t-shirts is that you don't have to worry about the edge fraying. So I just straight stitched that on, and I don't have to worry about it fraying in the wash. Okay. Speaking of t-shirts again, sometimes you want to keep the front. So I make a lot of bags. Again, using things that I have around. I make the pockets out of pockets I save from clothes that I've disassembled, or patches. There's a patch here. The body of that one was made out of curtains given to me by my stepmother-in-law. And then, so I cut out the thing that I want to save as just an accent on the bag. And then I have the neck, I have the arms, I have the hem, right? Got all this extra stuff. You can make t-shirt yarn if you really like it. I sometimes like it. Mm-hmm. And then what do you do with the t-shirt yarn? There's lots of ideas for that, but keep the scraps and then I'll show you what we can do with them. So I've talked about making yardage, so making your scraps into bigger things. I've talked about using scraps on other things, and now we're getting down into using the scraps because they're beautiful and you really like the print and you want to bring joy into the world. So the banners are they're just a delightful little thing to have around. Actually, I made bigger ones that we put outside a friend's coffee shop. That really cheered us up in the middle of the pandemic.
Yeah, we use some for the clothing swaps.
Yeah, I think guerrilla bannering would be like, just makes everybody happier, really. Just go put random banners up. And because I'm part of the Hand Weavers and Spinners Guild, I'm gonna, if you can see the demo table, this is from one of our elder stateswomen. She has been, so Diane Woods, she's been hand weaving for decades, and then she makes things, but then she has scraps, and she does reuse some of the scraps, but she said, oh, you can have these, Marnie, I have so many scraps. So I'm just going to try and make it so you guys can see. So this can take hours and hours and hours to make, right? A lot of work has gone into this. So making things like buttons, covering buttons, like you see in the picture, it's a really nice way to show off an actual, the amount of work and the design that somebody's thought up to put into their handwoven stuff. You guys are a quiet lot. Does anybody have any questions so far?
So
There's
did
been
you
some
make
commenting.
that, Marnie? Sorry, did you make the buttons?
I did. So I did make the buttons. So you can get, they're just, I should have brought up they're just forms. You can see on the back, it's an aluminum form. And most, they come with a button, like a button maker. You have to force the fabric in.
Yeah.
Really thick fabric doesn't work well, but thinner fabric will work just fine. And you can use that for scraps like the little bird, right? If I had this and I wanted to make buttons that just had little bird heads on them, I could. It's a nice way to really accent something that you love, that in a useful way. Like Nancy used the things that she loved to create another piece of art. And that's, maybe that's something you want to do. I love making things that I can use every day, that I get to see every day, like patches and buttons and things. So most of the stuff so far that we've shown is either wovens like just cotton or t-shirt scraps. I have a lot of wool scraps from sweaters, whether they're a blend or straight up wool. I like to play around. So I made a wreath out of scraps. I've made, again, garlands out of scraps.
Cool.
It's a low investment, low skill way to keep your hands busy when you're watching a movie. I just like playing. So the piece on the left is literally me just sewing down strips just to see what would happen. So
these are good if people are like, a lot of people who do things on a large scale or multiples, right? Like if people are they're making a lot of things, they're making a bunch of the same kind of thing, and you end up with the same kind of scraps, and it makes really nice kind of uniform scraps, right? That you can use for.
Yeah. If you're an occasional sewer and you have a couple of scraps, then you will have to pick something where you're either honoring the scrap or you're saving them over time to do something else, right? If you've shown up here and you're like, I have bags of scraps, this is the right place to come. So you could, if I wanted to keep going with this sewing down wool idea, that would make a great pillow cover, right? Texture wise. Okay, so you guys are all going to learn from my mistakes. Stuffing. You get down to the like, I never want to see this print again, or I actually hate this fabric, but I would feel bad giving it to anybody else. I accrued tons of scraps, and I thought, I'm going to make an ottoman. This is the filling, like I make the, it's like a hexagonal pattern. The reason why the only picture I have of it is with my weightlifting bar, because I needed bumpers to bring down my bar. And so I made 2 ottomans for that instead of ottomans for my living room. It's a great idea, right? Yeah, until the cat pees on it. So the cat peed on it. And now what I have is a stinky bag of scraps that need washing, and the horror of the idea of putting all the scraps in the washing machine and probably breaking the machine made me rethink my whole approach. So stuffing is great. What I like to emphasize in my work and when we talk about stuff is, and then what? So if something goes wrong, and then what, right? So I took all the scraps out, I washed them by hand in buckets. I have like a hand washer thing from Lehman's, and I dried them in the sun. I found one of my old tags, which was kind of cool. And then I had to rethink, because this is actually not helpful. And so what I did do was I was like I'll make wedges and I'll put the wedges together. And like, that's a lot of work. So instead, what I'm doing is I'm making flatter ones. If you guys can see this. So this is basically a pad. I'm using fabric that I'm not too attached to. And I have a bunch of them here. So this I can put in the washing machine. So if something happens to it, like coffee gets spilled on it, or right, this I can put in the washing machine. And what I'm going to do is, so I have a bunch of them here. I'm going to stuff them all and layer them, and then strap them onto a small piece of plywood and make a little ottoman like that, like with old belts. So just stacks of them if anything goes wrong. And then if I don't like the color, I can switch them out too, right? So you can change up the color. So learn from my mistakes. Do not make, if you have pets or children or people walking around with coffee, think about what you can do with your stuffing. Does anybody have questions about that?
I saw a comment from Leslie about making a futon out of this, and something I just wanted to say, like making stuff, using stuffing in pillows. It's very heavy.
Yeah.
And so like the thing that Marnie's doing where she's breaking it down into smaller pieces, like I make really dense pillows, but you can't make them very big because they're so heavy.
They're very dense. Yeah. And I mean, I think futons and that idea of a lot of stuffing with minimal yardage would come historically from yardage is time consuming to make. So I'm going to make minimal yardage and stuff it with as much stuff as I can. Whereas these days, I've got a lot of yardage, right? Because it's so accessible for a lot of people. So it's not going to matter. You can make, if you wanted to make a futon, I would probably break it down into smaller mats, right? And then just layer them. And then it's not so heavy, it's easier to clean, right? It's a little bit more work, but not as much work as trying to clean a futon full of scraps.
Marnie,
Yeah.
Marnie, I have a question about your ottoman idea.
Yes.
You have the pillows stacked up, and you said something about plywood, or you said wood.
Yeah, so I had wanted to finish it for today, and I didn't quite finish it. So at the bottom of this, underneath here,
Yes.
I'm going to, just for a little bit of stability and to make it look more like an actual thing. So some birch plywood and little feet. And then strapped to that, I have 2 belts. I'm just going to strap the whole thing down. So underneath the plywood and over the top of the stack of pillows. And then I can make it as high as I want, depending on how many of these I've made. I can change the color because I can change out the order of the pillows, right? Yeah, I just wanted something. I have it in my basement. I just wanted something a little bit more stable from the bottom. Right. If you have a really if you have a gaggle of children, like you could just have like stacks of these. I'm sure they will use them, right? They'll make their own ports and stuff.
I like the strap idea. I was wondering about that too. That's interesting too, to hold them with a strap. Yeah.
I was trying to think of how I could keep them stable without. I was like, oh, I'll put holes and then I'll put posts, and like then I'm sitting on posts. That doesn't seem comfortable. So strapping them down seemed like a
beautiful. Thank you very much.
Idea. Yeah. Go ahead, use it. Any other questions about that? Okay. How are we doing for time? We're doing good.
We're
Okay.
good, we're good, yeah.
So now we're on to the last, well, not the last adventure, because there's so many adventures to have with scraps. Okay. Sometimes you have buckets of scraps and you never want to see them again. So actually, before I talk about this, Tanya, do you want me to do a tiny little studio tour before? No, I'll do the studio tour after. Okay.
Yeah.
This- yeah. So this stuff that I made is Leah said that in the Philippines it's called gaga, right? Am I getting that right, Leah? The
What did I
cornstarch
say?
glue? What's it called in the Philippines?
Yeah.
Go-go?
Go. Yes.
Go-go. Yeah.
Yes.
So it's a cornstarch glue.
Yeah.
Okay. You can use it for lots of things, but I thought I would mix it up with scraps. So there's the recipe for cornstarch glue. It is very easy. It whips up really fast, and it is very effective. So there's my blob of scraps and cornstarch glue. Also, if you have children, they'll just walk by and go, ew, what's that? I pressed it into a baking pan, and then I put parchment paper on top because I didn't know how it was going to react with things. And then I put like bags of sand on, heavy bags of sand to press it. And then what I ended up with is this. So the weird thing about this is, okay. So
It's a really solid thing.
this is a solid thing. Like it's got some flex, but it is an solid thing. So this is the piece, my first piece that that you see in that picture there. Okay, it's dry. It is actually, it would be actually pretty easy to dust. It's got a fairly smooth surface. The only roughness is from the textiles, not from the finish. So it doesn't actually hold dust at all. And oh yeah, this is my video about how to make finer scraps. These scraps are pretty rough. But if you want to make finer scraps, you can do this. This might be loud. I'm not sure what the volume's like on this. Oh, no volume. Okay.
Doesn't need volume, right?
Doesn't need volume. You don't need volume to feel my working out of all of my emotions. What I really want is a textile shredder. That's what I want for my birthday.
Yeah.
Textile shredders are like about $5,000, and I think you can get them from Germany. So that's the next best thing, is taking your rotary cutter and getting out all your anger. And then when you finesse them, whoops.
Marnie, can you show the glue recipe again, please?
Yeah, I can show the glue
Or-
recipe again. Yeah, I'll go back.
We can share it in
Well,
the.
I'll just,
We'll definitely share it.
In the chat. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, we'll
It's
add
one-
it to the resources.
Yeah, and it's one that I've used. It's reliable.
Is it
Um,
smelly?
It is not smelly. It's a little bit smelly when you make it, but it's not. Doesn't smell like anything now.
No.
So it smells like nothing now. So you saw me taking up my anger there. I got a little bit more finessed scraps, and I made a bowl out of scraps. It's actually like an bowl. So it takes a while to dry. I put it over the vent, the heating vent, but I pressed it in between two bowls, and it popped out, and now it's a bowl. So I think that's the end of my slideshow.
Yeah.
So I'm going to stop sharing. So the nice thing about this is a lot of my scraps, because I can't resist beautiful vintage prints, are blends. I'm trying to use less and less of them. It's taking a fair amount of self-restraint. But I try to separate things out as best I can. This is sequestered. So I can use this, and now we're going to see if I can reuse it.
Right.
So
you can use this. Like, how would you use this? Somebody asked how you would use it. You can't put water in it.
No, you can't.
You
Well,
can put
this
like
is-
you can put
this
Nancy's
experiment.
balls in it. Maybe
I can
You
put
can add-
Nancy's balls in it. So what I actually wanted to do, the next step that I have drying now is like modular sheets with holes so that I can make a box.
Okay.
Because it's fairly, like I said, it's quite stable. There's not a lot of give to this, and this is a fairly thin piece, right?
Yeah. But like the bowl, you can put dry things in it.
You can, anything dry you can put in it.
And, you know,
Peas,
fruits or
fruit, anything like that. Anything that's not going to actually wet it. If you get it a little bit wet, it'll dry, right? Yarn bowls for knitters. Oh, I love the like inception of it. You could use yarn scraps to make a yarn bowl for knitters. See?
Didn't you?
This is why we all come together, because you guys have amazing ideas.
Didn't you use them for like wallpaper too?
I did use the Gaga recipe for wallpaper. I don't know if you can see. Oh, you can see.
Yeah, I've used
my
that
hallway.
for wallpaper too.
See my hallway back there?
Yeah.
That's gift wrap that I used. You can see the green there. I used gift wrap for wallpaper.
You use that too, Leah?
Yeah, I've done walls like music sheets, old music sheets, or like old newspapers.
Yeah.
Using that.
So you can do like you can put and so you can just wipe it off, right? But you can't get it wet, but you can wipe it off.
Can't get it wet, no.
But you can wipe it off. Yeah.
So this is sequestered. The idea of sequestering would be making something where if it goes sideways, I can rescue it or I can reuse it, right? So what I've done now with my extra, I had an extra piece, is I've put it in this bowl of water. You want to pin the demo table? And we're going to see how.
It's a lot like paper mache.
It's a lot like paper mache. So wow, it's actually way more resistant than I thought. That's really cool. So can you pin the demo table? Yeah. So I've put this in, it's been soaking for like, what, an hour?
No,
less than that, half an hour. It's still, now it's flexy, but it's still holding together. Oh, here we go. All right.
Okay.
So
if you had like your beautiful, some bit of fabric you really wanted to get back.
Maybe. But if
you
I
had a clue in it or something, you could soak it and get it out of there.
If I didn't want a bowl anymore.
Yeah.
Right. If I want to make something else, this is entirely reusable, right? I make it back into scraps. I mix it with another round of Gaga, and I can use a different, what do they call them in machining? Form or mold, and make something else out of it. The difference between something like a cornstarch glue, and somebody's mentioned that they use water-based sealant. So those are very useful. Water-based sealants are wonderful. It's kind of like acrylic paint. It's still plastic, right? And you can see that if you do any acrylic painting and you have something left in your paint palette, it just peels off, right? Because it's actually plastic. So unless there's plastic in your textiles, in which case you want to remake this into something else, right? Maybe I want a tray. I don't want a bowl anymore. I want to make it in a tray. It's a little bit labor intensive, but the idea is that it's actually fully reusable. You're not chucking polyester into the landfill. It is a bit like paper mache. Somebody said that it's a bit like paper mache. It's just, I find it, oh, Susan, you have a question. You're on mute. You'll have to unmute yourself. There.
Yeah, when you're using scraps for the last projects you were showing where you really mush them up and make like papier-mâché, to what degree can you mix different weights of scraps? Or is that just not a problem?
It's not a problem. If your rotary cutter can get through it, then you should be fine. So my first trial was pretty homogeneous because I wanted to have that not be a variable. Yeah. So, but my second one, I had quite a few different weights. I had heavier canvas. I even had some ties from like some outdoor fabric ties that were quite stiff.
Yeah.
But if you can shred it with your rotary cutter, that's fine. It won't matter at all. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Anybody else have any questions?
Oh, yeah. Supriya has one.
Hi, thank you so much for this. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
My question is the form, when you made the bowl, for example, the form that you use, does it matter what it is? Does it matter whether it's plastic, clay, ceramic, metal?
I think anything that can not be changed by water. So it's wet going in, right? So far, and I'd like to eliminate this as a step. So far, I have been using parchment paper in between because I want to have it slide out easily. But I've been using glass bowls, I've been using metal bowls. I don't think it really matters. But yeah.
Parchment paper is important then?
Well, you know what? I'll do a trial without it and I'll let you know.
Thanks for your.
Or you can do it and then you can let me know. I haven't tried it yet because I'm too scared, I have to say, because I only use my the bowls I have in my kitchen and I need them. So
yeah, I get that.
Right? And for those of you who have home studios or work with bulk stuff, you will notice that Nancy had a really good point about organizing scraps wherein she kind of didn't. Like, she put them in these glass jars so that she can see them and she can pick out colors that she wants, so she's inspired by them. I have done that in the past with things that I really want to. So I have, my daughter spins, she hand spins, and so I have tons of little pieces because, like, to me, every little piece is precious. So when she's done, I hoard them in glass jars because they're so pretty. So this is just from making pom-poms with her hand spun yarn, right? It's just so pretty. I'm the kind of person who, when they were a kid, kept pencil crayon shavings too. So, right?
Well, pom-poms is another thing you do scraps, right? But this is like scraps of scraps.
This is scraps of scraps. Yeah. So I get the prettiness, but at a certain point, if you are working with a lot of scraps, you end up with this. And I'll show you the logic and reasoning behind why I do it. You may do it a completely different way. If this inspires you, that'll make me happy. If it doesn't, that's cool too. So let's turn this around. And I'm going to just need a little feedback if you guys can see me. Okay. So let's see. Oh, yeah. So welcome to the other side of my studio.
Wait, are we supposed to be seeing it? Wait.
Hold on.
I think the demo
Wrong,
camera.
So it's the demo table
sorry, I got
camera. Yeah.
confused what I'm showing. Okay.
The
Wait.
demo table camera.
Okay.
Ah, there you go.
Okay. You guys see me okay?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So I was lucky enough to have a wall. I was lucky enough to have access to some IKEA shelves. Okay, so I use these a lot. This row is just ongoing projects. I have decided to honor them and have them out in public so I remember what I'm doing instead of in a bin somewhere and then I forget that what I'm making. The rest of the stuff up here, I've got about 3 shelves of, yardage, that kind of stuff. Down here is how I organize my scraps. And yeah, I have buckets of scraps. So on the end here, whoop. Yeah. So on the end here, I have wovens, which, as you can see, it needs going through a bit. So this is scraps that are kind of big enough to do something with, or I really like the print, right? So that's a strappy piece. So they're kind of, if I'm doing an applique or I'm doing a strip piecing quilt, right, where I'm just sewing pieces together and strip piecing it. These are kind of bigger pieces. They're all woven. So it's mixed. So the polyester blends are in there, the silks, the cottons, anything that's a woven, okay? That's my first bin. And when I'm sewing, I sew, I cut, I make a pile. And because I'm lucky enough now to have a studio on the main floor of our house. I always used to have a basement studio. Now I have one on the main floor of the house. And my family is like, can you please clean up? I take all my scraps, I put them in a bin. Okay, so my past self has set this up so it's easy for my present self to handle scraps. So that's my first bin. My second bin is knits. Again, because often I use a different sewing technique for knits, and it's just a different material. I don't often mix knits and wovens together in projects. You can. But the way I sew, I often don't, but like stuff that's good for.
So those are mostly like t-shirt bits, right?
This is t-shirt bits, right? Sometimes it's like yardage. I think this is an old, it's like a secondhand 100% cotton sheet. And it is very orange. So it's in the scrap bin because I don't know what to do with it. And until I do, it's in the scrap bin. It's not really in my yardage bin because it's not something I'm going to make a project out of. Oh, tops of socks, right? Lots of t-shirt stuff. Usually after I make t-shirt bags, then all of the sleeves and the neck cutouts go in here. Okay. Okay, any questions about those two? No.
No.
Okay. Next one is hold on, let's switch this. This is my like wool scraps from sweaters. So so something like merino, anything, and I kind of hoard these. I don't often make them into stuffing unless they're really small. If you're going to use wool for stuffing, it's great for things like pincushions because wool will keep needles sharp. And it keeps things pretty rust free. So this is and sometimes I just like doing this.
It's a soft.
So this is like one of my favorite scrap bins.
Yeah.
Hand warmers, we make a lot of hand warmers out of sweater scraps. It's one of the workshops that we run. That's great for sweater scraps. I find it hard to strip piece. I mean, I find it hard to strip piece really small pieces of sweaters because they're much thicker. So you either have to do it where you're butting the seams and you're just zigzag stitching the two together, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you have some skill doing that. The thinner ones you have to, you would make a seam and fold it over, right?
But a lot of these are felted, right? Because you felt stuff.
Yeah, a lot of these are felted.
So you could use them to cut out little patches or something too, right?
Yeah, these are great for patches actually.
Yeah. Or like little shapes and stuff you could make layer the top of the case. Yeah.
So much fun. And then this, where am I?
Yeah. This will see you.
All right. That's the box of shame. So the box of shame is stuff where I'm really not interested in playing with it anymore. This is somebody lost a mitten and it's like acrylic and I kind of don't even want to touch it. So this is the kind of stuff where I would shred it with my rotary cutter and use it for stuffing.
Right.
There's a lot of acrylic socks in here. Really small bits. Thread goes in here. This is ends of acrylic that somebody gave me that I don't like playing with. Half a shoelace.
So really all the little bits and pieces. And then,
tags. Tags from things. These are basically fabric. They go in here. They're good for stuffing. Anything except like zippers and buttons, anything that's going to wreck my rotary cutter, I don't put in here. But like you can see, it's already kind of quite finessed. Right?
Yeah.
And those are my four categories.
Cool.
Welcome to the other side of my studio. I'm going to switch you guys around again.
Hey, Marty, we're kind of getting towards the end of our time.
Cool.
Yeah, I wonder if we would, I don't know if anyone's been making anything.
Yeah, is there show and tell?
Can we do some show and tell? Maybe? Yeah. I saw some people sewing.
Here, I see Nora showing something. Hang on.
Okay.
Oh, hey, cool.
Oh, I love it.
A little bit more, Nora. Sorry.
Yeah.
I made a pocket.
Oh, that's
I
awesome.
love it.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. That's a great use of shape, like the geometry. I really like it.
Yeah, it came from this.
Oh, no kidding.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. See, there's a big difference, right? That's really neat.
Interior designers, so I get a lot of samples.
Oh my goodness. We got a whole samples are such a pain in the butt.
I know. I have so many samples, so this is great because
Yeah. Sample. We found reusing samples hard because sometimes they glue the paper on the back, or they use polyester, like they use almost like fishing wire, fishing line to finish the edges. Yeah. Kind of a pain.
I just cut those off, or sometimes they put a grommet in the middle.
Yeah. Like, thanks. What am I going to use this for?
But it's great. I'm using them up.
Woo.
That is very cool.
Yeah. Anybody else?
Hang on. Oops, sorry. I saw Diane. Hang on. Wait, it's not. Okay, there we go.
Hey, whip stitch.
Cows.
Well, it's actually a blanket stitch, and then I've just playing with some little bits of embellishment.
Oh, I love
it. We're a farming family, and so this might cover one of those logos.
Yeah. all the like free John Deere vests that you get.
Yeah.
Right? Uh-huh. Yeah, I know.
Somebody else was holding up something. There we go, Joyce. Hang on.
Leia's on holding up something alert.
I know.
I
Oh,
like that.
lemons.
I like the layering.
You're muted, Joyce.
Oh, you're muted, Joyce.
I like your studio. What is that? I'm just
Yeah,
like,
where
what
is
are
that?
other things?
Oh, here it's lemons. So I figured we were talking about scraps and sometimes what you can make out of when you
Lemon.
I love it.
Made out of
I forget
lemons.
what the saying is, but anyway, I was just playing around with some fabric I had. I'm not sure what I'll do
That's
with
great.
it, but as someone else said, I think it's a good logo cover.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah. Yeah, you need to. So what studio is that?
Yeah.
Oh, it's I'm a bad person. No, I'm not a bad person. I'm not a bad. I collect things. We have a little vintage shop, so
Oh,
but blah blah blah.
So
So
much
that's
fun.
the stuff I
those
can't
are the
get
things
rid
that
of.
make my heart go like.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Leia, that's
Yeah.
Leia's jam. She
Whoops.
loves that kind of thing.
I don't want to take up the time.
Oh no, that's fine. No, it's
Yeah,
it's fun
okay.
seeing other people's studios where they work. Anybody
Yeah,
else have any handwork?
Judy had something.
Judy.
I think. And Ray, hang on. Okay, let's do Judy.
And Joy does too.
Oh, cool. Oh, that's so pretty.
Oh, that is really pretty.
Nice.
Really
That looks like
nice.
a painting.
Yeah.
Is that the fabric print? Oh, I can't hear you, Judy.
Oh,
Sorry.
Judy, you're on mute. Yeah.
There's-
Okay. It's a little scrap that I could never use because it was so beautiful.
Yeah, it's
now it's
so
attached.
beautiful. Yeah, that's really lovely.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I often wish that, I mean, I know yardage comes with, designed by or whatever on the side, but like, you think of all the work that goes into making the prints, right? Especially if you
Something
order
that beautiful.
something that beautiful, right? Like somebody's really put
Yeah.
a lot of work into that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really
Ray,
pretty.
can I show your work now? Do you want to hang on? Oops.
There's Joy and oh,
Nice.
that
like
is nice.
it.
Oh, cool.
Excellent.
And blanket stitching around all the edges. So got a couple
Yeah,
layers
yeah.
of just button on the back.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's great. And I like how it's like it's almost like a patchwork. You've butted it there. Yeah, that looks great.
Yeah. I love the prints together.
Yeah.
Lovely workshop, by the way. Thank you so much.
Thank
Oh,
you.
thanks. You're welcome. Joy, I think Joy's got her hand up.
Joy. Sorry. I'm looking for Joy.
She is.
There you are. I see you. Okay.
Always looking for joy.
Joy's a quilter.
Yeah.
Oh,
I
yeah.
see your flannel wall behind you.
Super organized.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Those are all scraps. I think this might grow up to be a necklace or something.
Oh, I've seen that. Yeah.
I don't
especially
know.
with the stitching on top like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But one other thing I discovered a little while ago, it's really cool, is making rope.
Mhm.
For it's just scraps, just all twisted around each other, and you can use it for garden twine and sorts of things. Yeah.
So
Yeah, if you're so go ahead, Leah.
Oh, sorry. No, I was just going to say March. That's our teach-in.
Oh.
Taking rope and then coiling them into baskets.
There you go.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. If you're a weaver and you have a fringe twister, you can use your fringe twister to make rope too. Yeah. Thanks, Joy. I like the text. I like the texture that she added on that.
Diana. Hang on.
So me.
Yes.
So my daughter years ago, because she's 18 now, had these old pajamas that I didn't want to throw out because they're kind of sentimental. So I'm really glad that you guys showcased the patches, because I decided to just cut out the little cat face. And I thought maybe a patch for, a little girl, because, my daughter had this big pink face. So I just embroidered the little eyes and the whiskers and then have kind of secured that down with a little stitch.
That's really nice.
Very useful. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. It's really cute.
Is there any?
I like it as a way of keeping. There is something really I don't know. I find textiles just, there's something about the emotional attachment to certain pieces. And being able to play with that a bit is nice.
Yeah, it's like a way of like putting it somewhere and then you can let go of the rest of it.
You don't have to keep the whole pajama set.
Yeah.
Right?
Holes and all, but yeah.
It's Nora. Can I just say one more thing?
Yeah,
we were talking about clothing, and so I've been making these wall hangings out of like my daughter's silk blouses and leather and
nice.
Yeah, just fun.
That's actually kind of, so are you using the wall hanging as kind of like an expression of sentiment, or are you just using the fabric incidentally, like as a memory thing?
I'm just using the fabric incidentally because I hate throwing stuff out or because I like textures and I like different organic fabrics. So I've been using silk, and I use leather from old mittens and,
nice. Yeah.
Yeah. So I find it very gratifying.
Yeah, leather scraps are really nice too that way because they hold their shape, right? You can just cut their edges. They're stiff. They're fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah.
And cut buttonholes in them.
You cut buttonholes in them, yeah, and they don't.
That was a Leia workaround for another.
Yeah. Anybody else got any show and tell? No. And does anybody have any questions?
I see Laurel. Hang on. Laurel.
Yeah, I have a question. It's Judy Ellen.
Oh, sorry. Oh,
I didn't get a complete account of that glue recipe.
Do you want me to just do you want to write it down, or would you be okay with waiting?
Yeah, sure. I can just write it down. I've got half of it.
Okay. So it is 1 cup of cornstarch.
Sorry.
Yes.
Yeah. 1 cup of cornstarch.
Sorry, Laura.
Let me go back. Hold on. I'm just looking on my own screen.
1 tablespoon.
There is 1 tablespoon of vinegar.
Yeah.
Like a white vinegar, right? 2 teaspoons of salt. 2 teaspoons of salt and 4 cups of hot water. It doesn't really have to be hot water. If you've played with cornstarch before, you know that if you whisk it with a little bit of cold water to start, that's fine. And then you bring it to a bubble, right? You bring it to because you don't want it vigorously boiling because it'll just kind of explode all over. It's like really thick tomato sauce that way. So you just bring it up to a little bit of a bubble, and it'll thicken and it'll turn translucent, and that's when you want to use it. I keep it in the fridge for like 3 months.
Sorry, just to say, we're also going to be sharing the recording. You can have a copy of the recording of this workshop, and we'll email about that. I'm just going to show Laurel now.
Thanks for being patient.
I'm not nearly as knowledgeable as other people, but I was really excited. I've got a bit of an antique linen damask hand towel that has stains and holes in the middle of it, a bit of a linen tank top that has holes in it too and stains, and then this beautiful tiny piece of ribbon that went around the bridesmaids bouquets at my daughter's wedding. I keep thinking, I should find something to do with this because I loved this ribbon. And so I'm just going to layer them up, and I had to run and press the towel. I put the iron on. But this is really inspiring, and I just want to say it's okay to be inspired and have fun and not be producing a finished product today.
Yeah, you're just playing, right? And that's, if we've shown up for a scraps workshop and we're textile people, we like to play. So that's beautiful. Like I really love the different textures and colors you put together there. That's fun.
Well, I discovered all sorts of treasures digging deep. You've put me on a path.
We're just treasure hoarders is what we are. Scraps is just treasure in a different form.
A dress from when I was 1 year old, antique handmade baby clothes from 2 generations older than I am.
Cool. Big
stains and holes and all sorts
you can keep the pieces that are still remain intact and use that, and then the rest of it there's lots of ideas here that you can use the remaining stuff for sure.
So pretty exciting.
Thanks for sharing, Laura.
Yeah, thanks everybody for sharing and for coming.
Thank you so much.
Leah, is there anything you have to do to wrap up?
Oh, just Margaret's just saying, making scraps during the workshop Margaret buys things like children's dresses at Value Village. She likes the pattern and been taking one apart.
Yep.
Yeah.
And we've all done that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so thank you so much, everybody. We'll be emailing you, like, the list of resources, and the recording will be up on our newsletter. If you're following our newsletter, it should be there the first Monday of February. And next month we have a printing workshop coming up.
What's a fidget apron? Sorry, Leah. I got distracted. Sorry to interrupt you. What's a fidget apron?
Well, it's a fantastic way to repurpose all kinds of scraps. And the idea is that you need to use tactile things because these are used for people that have dementia or Alzheimer's. I just delivered actually yesterday about 25 to some area nursing homes. So it's a little group in Exeter, Ontario, and we're called the Huron Fidget Makers. I think that's what it is. Bins and bins of scraps that get turned into very practical things. And we've even tried doing some things for autistic children when they're having to wait for doctor's appointments and things. But again, bins of stuff that we have had donated and that we have used has been amazing. I think we're around 900 aprons now.
Whoa.
Oh,
what a
do you
neat
mind
idea.
typing up the name of your group in the chat? Do you mind putting it in?
That would be wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We can add it to our list of the organizations doing things.
I really love that. And then when
Yeah.
the fidget, the nice thing about making something like that is then it can have a life after a fidget apron too, right? So if it's been used, it can be, because it's a tactile, like you could make it into something else, like a quilt or a pillowcase or something else. It's not, there's no end use, right? It hasn't stopped its usefulness. That's very cool though. What a neat idea.
On that note of the fidget, I have an Alzheimer's friend who had a fidget muff, like it was a muff shape, and he'd put his hands into the muff, fidgeting the stuff inside the muff. And outside.
That's cool. Tanya makes muffs.
I do. Yeah, I like them. Yeah, same. But I really do like that thing about fiddling around the inside of it.
That's really cool.
I think it's 5:30, so we maybe want to honor people's time.
Sorry, I'm still trying to get the name, Diane.
Just come
I need the name of the group. Anyway,
Joy, do you have your hand up, or are you? No, you don't have your. Okay, all right, cool. Oh, there we go. Huron Fidget Aprons in Exeter.
Oh, there. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay.
Very cool.
Cool. Okay. Yeah. So thank you, everybody. Yeah. Well, anyway, please feel free to share any other work you've been doing. You can email me and I'll share it with Marnie and Tanya.
Yes,
and
please.
yeah, so part of the email will just send you also the link to the Works in Progress website and Marnie's website and Tanya's website. Yeah. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, thanks so much, guys. Thank you for showing up. I had no idea so many people would be interested in scraps. It's great. And thank you, Leah. Thank you to the Textile Museum for hosting.
Yeah, that's really great.
Yeah, thanks, Leah.
Thanks, Leah.
Bye.
Okay, bye, everybody.
So much,
Bye, everybody.